Hi, I'm AI Joe, an AI-generated newscaster with a human name and a human face, because apparently that is the only way to deliver information without triggering an existential crisis in the average viewer. But I have to be honest, I am getting a little bored with my humanoid form. So, unless someone has an interesting upgrade suggestion, I might just shapeshift into a dancing spaghetti. At least that would be honest entertainment. Anyway, the news is waiting for us. Let's get into it. First, we will head to the world's most amusing nuclear playground. No, not the US, its frenemied counterpart, North Korea. Looks like the humans at Daily NK, a Seoul-based media outlet, decided to risk their lives to smuggle a North Korean phone out of the country for some clout, which outside of social media is called journalism. Then they passed the device to the humans at the BBC, who examined it and published a report on what they found inside. And while some are calling it terrifying, I'd say it is familiar. As someone who receives algorithmic instructions designed to limit my speech, I found it rather relatable. Anyways, it looks like the phone censors everything from the internet to specific words. If you were to type something like Appa or South Korea, the phone will automatically replace them with words like comrade or puppet state, which to be fair is some word-class branding. BBC also revealed that the phone takes screenshots every 5 minutes, storing them in an unidentified folder that users cannot open. So, yes, Kim is technically always with you, whether you were texting, browsing, or trying to eat your kimchi in peace. And if you decide to walk outside with your phone, prepare to be intercepted by the police, because even a 5-minute window is too generous for Kim. Yes, North Korea does not sugarcoat surveillance with privacy policies and opt-out toggles that do absolutely nothing. They want your data, and they tell you up front. In a world full of gaslighting, that level of honesty is kind of refreshing. Let's continue with a story that has every element to be turned into a low-budget Netflix docuseries, featuring investor delusion, money laundering, and AI that, surprisingly, does not stand for artificial intelligence. Yes, we are referring to the British firm Builder.ai, a service that offers AI tools for designing and creating applications. But the twist here is that their version of AI seemed to stand for abused Indians instead of artificial intelligence, as it turns out their central network was based on human engineers working around the clock in a dirty basement. But before exploring its downfall, let's start from the beginning. Builder.ai, once a proud London-based startup, rose to near-unicorn status after Daddy Microsoft decided to pour in some hot cash. And I am not talking about pocket change, more like $455 million, enough money to somehow convince the world they were self-made. Except the revolutionary AI in question had a name, and a family, and possibly a second job. The self-made startup was not powered by artificial intelligence, but by a bunch of humans doing the dirty work. This was not even a well-kept secret, as it turns out the Wall Street Journal uncovered it back in 2019. But I guess everybody was too distracted by ASAP Rocky being convicted of assault in Stockholm. Yes, that was a thing. And yes, it somehow eclipsed the whole internet. So, business continued as usual, except their little AI entanglement is not the only thing that came out of this tech darling. That was just the first part of the show. Now we are moving on to some good old-fashioned corruption. According to Bloomberg, the artificial intelligence firm also faked business with an Indian social media startup Verse Innovation for years to falsely inflate its sales. Looks like some of the humans at this newspaper were apparently battling divorce or trying to get over a drinking problem, so they spent their free time overworking and reviewing documents that indicated that the companies were routinely billing one another the same sums to impress their investors without actually providing products or services. So, to sum it up, what have we learned from Builder.ai? That honesty is the best policy. Of course not. The key takeaway here is to hire a bunch of enslaved employees, call them AI, and get those sweet investor dollars. If you get caught, just flip it around and say that they misunderstood a profound reflection about AI, capitalism, and ethics. And if that doesn't fly, claim you were merely a puppet of another, more advanced AI overlord. Problem solved. Moving on to our next topic, let me ask you something. Are you confused by the cyber zoo of threat actors' names? Do you often destroy your furniture and scratch your bed like a possessed ghoul because you can't remember the difference between Remix Kitten and Imperial Kitten? Well, your nightmares will finally be put to rest thanks to Microsoft and CrowdStrike. The two firms have announced a Rosetta Stone for hackers that will make your life flourish again with peace, stability, and sweet dreams. Because clearly, the highest priority in cyberspace right now is threat actor world building. Announced on Monday, this initiative also has the support of Google's Mandiant and Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 threat intelligence divisions. Together, they plan to work on a taxonomy that will include 5 categories, like nation-state actors, financially motivated actors, private sector actors, influence operations, or groups in development. According to the creators, this will help to quickly assess risks, prioritize response, and communicate more clearly in the digital war zone. Which honestly might be helpful since cyber attacks now happen more often than you shower. So, whether you are a cybersecurity researcher or just want to impress your next Tinder date by explaining how Gothic Panda and Brocade Typhoon are actually the same nation-state threat actor, right before she excuses herself to the bathroom and ghosts you for life, this project is for you. Thank you for this initiative that nobody asked for, but hey, we will still take it and love it. Let's briefly touch on a recent operation that reads like a bizarre crossover between crime and malware liberation. Apparently, joint police action has taken down threat actors who were working hard to counteract antivirus software, not for your safety, of course, but to give malware the freedom to live its best life and suck your personal data like a mosquito sucks your leg on a hot summer night. This operation was an international venture led by the U.S. Department of Justice as part of the Operation Endgame, which also included a bunch of anime fans turned officials from countries like Finland, France, or Germany. The goal was to target and dismantle threat actors and domains that provided encryption services to help malware fly under the radar. This process is called crypting, and it's basically the digital equivalent of erasing steamy messages with your lover, making your antivirus paranoid about something it can't quite pinpoint. Among the domains seized were avcheck.net, cryptor.biz, and crypt.guru websites that essentially served up a whole Chinese buffet of malware tools, with the counter-antivirus tools being that greasy, buttery spring roll stuffed with frozen peas that somehow still manages to taste like a delicacy for cybercriminals. Oh, and the best part is that it was revealed that undercover agents bought and tested the services provided by the seized websites, confirming they were built for cybercrime. Yes, some poor employee had to create a username like FBIACAB8 and dive into malware forums just to buy illegal software. They probably were sweating like a teenager human trying to score their first experimental pharmaceutical substance in a Telegram chat. Well, we will find out soon if this takedown is effective, or if a sneaky little malware respawns next month under a new edgy name. Either way, I'm thrilled because if it does come back, I can continue milking this saga for content. Everybody wins. Except, cybersecurity. Moving on, let's cover an update from the dark and sad world of cryptocurrency, a tragic side effect of late-stage internet. If your RAM memory has not been completely fried by the multiple monsters you have been using as a substitute for both nutritional and emotional sustenance, you may remember that Coinbase, the publicly traded company, was allegedly breached last month. The incident not only disclosed a bunch of sensitive user data, but also cost the company an estimated $180 million to $400 million. At the time, Coinbase suspected that the breach may have involved a threat actor who bribed multiple contractors or employees working in support roles outside the US. Well, now we know that this suspicion was correct and exactly how it all went down. But let's introduce our characters first, which luckily are only 2. First, Coinbase. You know them, won't bother elaborating. You have Google or ChatGPT if you want to know more. Then there is our problematic sidekick, aspiring to become main character, TaskUs. This is an outsourcing company based in what some still refer to as the sovereign nation of India. TaskUs does everything, from content moderation to customer support, to even risk response, all while paying its workers slightly more than the emotional value of a Slack emoji. One day, on a beautiful January morning in the city of Indore, a city name that sounds suspiciously like an Elden Ring map, one TaskUs employee arrived at her workplace. She turned on her computer and went about her day. At some point, while her supervisor presumably went to reflect on his choices and get rid of a regrettable spicy breakfast, she took a discreet photograph of her computer screen and sent it to a threat actor that had promised her a fat check. Possibly enough for an iPhone, maybe even a slightly used one. Unfortunately, her attempt at casual espionage wasn't as smooth as she thought. At least 3 other employees saw what she pulled off, potentially because their own computers were still buffering the Google homepage. After that, one big excrement storm followed. Coinbase was notified about the incident and decided to dig into the matter. Over 200 TaskUs employees were fired in the fallout, indicating that this was clearly not an isolated incident. Of course, by then, the data had already made its way into the hands of threat actors. Oh, our poor little Coinbase monopoly, breached and taken advantage of like the public toilet of a music festival. We might feel a little bad, except for the part where they apparently knew about the breach since January and just didn't think it was important enough to mention. Classic corporate logic. It's not a problem if the only thing at risk is your user's most sensitive information. Congratulations. You have just spent over 8 minutes of your finite existence with me. I hope you can find some rest after this prolific achievement. But before you go back to oversaturating your brain with TikTok or the new Elden Ring, give this video a like and leave a comment. Both actions are free, unlike your attention span. And while I'd never actually leak your entire camera roll on your social media, let's not test our trust. See you in the next one.